All right, here we go. Oh, whew, that worked. Okay, Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, and I can hear you. Welcome. What would you like to say this morning?
You're not really mentioning the black people that sold their family members to the Europeans.
Mm.
And what about the blacks that owned slaves in America? How about that?
So why don't you tell us, Daniel, which Africans sold black people into enslavement to Europeans?
Are you saying that black people didn't sell black people?
No, I'm saying you seem to have some insight here. Educate us.
I just said it.
Well, you said Africans sold Africans. Like, you know that there are like over 50 countries in the continent of Africa, thousands of languages that are spoken. Surely you've got something more than just a talking point level, because you're giving Scott Moran, like, you have a talking point, but you ain't got no data. Could you tell us from where, like which kingdoms? Because we should know that, right? Because we know the ships, we know the names of the ships, we have the insurance records that tell us which ships were being insured, which enslaved Africans were being insured, which Africans were selling other Africans.
Spook.
Got him! Oh, wait. Did he hang up or did he just go silent? Wait, Daniel, are you there? What happened? You have the mic. We're all waiting. Bated breath. Oh, my God. That, friends. Hold on. Let me go back. That, my friends, is what we call cognitive dissonance. You know what? We got to find a way to put the trolls on somebody's payroll, because they just give us too much. They give us too much. Daniel, where you at? The line is still open. The timer's still going. You don't want to tell us? You got so much to say? You ain't got shit to say, my dog. You ain't got. Okay, but to be fair. To be fair, and I've talked about this before, we know that the entire world was participatory in a slave trade of sorts. In fact, the root of the word slave comes from Slav, as in Slavic, which is a very European concept, because Europeans were selling each other into enslavement. That's part of what they did. But we all know about, and we've talked about this extensively. Daniel probably he ain't pay attention. I don't know what school he went to. Probably one of them schools Vivek Vivacious Ramaswamy was talking about. But what Daniel is talking about is the notion that when the Portuguese were coming down into the continent of Africa, they were engaging in trade because the entire world had slave trade. Now, because there is a difference, the difference between the slavery that existed prior to the transatlantic African slave trade, Daniel, since you're so curious, is that in the pre-transatlantic African slave trade, enslaved people were, and this was not enslaved Africans, this was enslaved people, because this was a global thing. If you were in a war and you lost, and your side would be taken into enslavement. The difference was chattel slavery. Chattel slavery was a type of slavery that Europeans created that basically said once you're a slave, you could never not be a slave. It was determined by race, not by whether or not you had been captured in a war, and your lack of rights and your enslavement was inheritable, meaning that your children's children would always be enslaved. That was a new thing. That was a new thing that white people created. And Daniel, I'm presuming you're white, so you have your ancestors to thank for that. That's the one thing y'all have created that has seemed to produce a lot of results for you. And now we're sort of here in a space where we got to figure these things out. But this is why I'm going to suggest, Daniel, that you read. There's a book, and actually one of you had asked me for a book recommendations the other day, and I forgot a couple. Michael Harriot's actual Black AF history. Daniel, you might want to read that. They talk about this a lot. And then next time you call, we can actually have an intellectual conversation where you won't just be like stunned into silence, right? Because I know you was expecting me to start yelling at you and cussing and doing all that stuff, but I could tell pretty well early on you don't know things. And so I save that energy for people who know things. But you might want to read Black AF History by Michael Harriot. Really, really good. That talks about that. Also, Stamped from the Beginning. That's another book to add to your book list for anyone in Urban Youth, but certainly for you, Daniel, to help you be able to have an actual conversation about this. Because, Daniel, you're giving deployable Walmart with 125,000%. And if you missed that part, just rewind and you'll hear the conversation that we had about one of your fellow kinfolk earlier. Let's get some more calls.